To me, the great hope is that now these little 8mm video recorders and stuff are coming around. Some just people who normally wouldn't make movies are going to be making them, and suddenly one day some little fat girl in Ohio is going to be the new Mozart, and make a beautiful film with her little father's camera recorder. And for once, the so-called professionalism about movies will be destroyed forever, and it'll really become an art form.
In the modern world, there are so many useless debates and arguments fomented in bad faith or laziness that it's almost better to stay away from human discourse entirely. Stay away from the internet, and honestly, today with the fractured nature of society, it's difficult to have an intelligent conversation that's unbiased with almost anybody, even your friends and family. No two people can ever agree on everything, and it becomes difficult to even define concepts that we think we're familiar with rigidly in a way that we can all discuss them and have some measure of understanding. The thinking goes that in the future we may not even need human exposure when we have the oracle of artificial intelligence, the ultimate intelligence, to guide us. When it comes down to everyday topics that we're all kind of in tune with, or at least we think we're in tune with, you have one of the most useless debates in the last few years between the so-called AI bros that really would just want to push the technical boundaries of what humans and just the world we live in is capable of. And then you have the very pretentious, just as pretentious, if not much more so, and in many cases, the useless art bros, the very self-absorbed, self-important, those that believe that art is open to all interpretations, so you cannot criticize their art. They can never be wrong. Their opinions can never be scrutinized because everything is subjective. And I've never supported that viewpoint, and I really want to deconstruct that in this video. So part one of this video is going to be the deconstruction of the bad arguments against AI and really what is the meaning of art. We'll go into many different topics like plagiarism and why plagiarism is far too overblown by people like H. Bomber guy who made a ridiculous video that got millions and millions of views, but it was a really bad faith video because he never looked at the reality of plagiarism, the fact that it's everywhere.
To put the rollerblades on
the roller skates there on Roller Girl?
Right. You gonna take credit for that, or
yeah? No, I'm gonna take credit for it. I'm just wondering if I should tell the truth on how I
no, come on, tell us.
I don't know.
But this goes beyond plagiarism into just the actual nature, the true understanding of what art is, and the very subtle processes that we use every day to communicate and to create things, and why the finished product is really the only thing that matters. This mystification, this romanticism of the artistic endeavor and the artistic process. It's one thing to be sentimental about it, but it doesn't actually translate to anything tangible. So let's start with the fact that the magic of believing in our hearts that we're creating something wonderful is completely different to what we actually see. The way you feel about something doesn't necessarily translate into the work. Okay, human beings are not necessarily intrinsically endowed with the ability to make art. This is like saying that every person that holds a baseball bat and can swing it is going to hit a home run every time. If you have the physical potential to do something, yes, you can. Anyone can draw, anyone can paint. But that doesn't mean that you've created something that truly has value, that truly communicates something. It's always interpreted that you have to have intention. You have to have intention in order to make something. But the reality of the situation is all that matters is what is there in the data. The recipe doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if Chef Cousteau is the one who prepared the recipe for you tonight. The only thing that matters is that you are following the formula. If the formula is followed routinely, then you will get the same results every time. This is just basic science. If you repeat the experiment, it doesn't matter who the scientist is. It doesn't matter who the musician is. If you follow the musical notes, all right, one of the big arguments against plagiarism in the music world is that really it's just playing the keys that exist on the instrument, playing the same notes in the same key and the same pitch and all those things. You cannot help but achieve the same results. So when you get two songs that sound similar, it's because they're being played in the same key. It's unavoidable. So that kind of removes all of this sort of extrinsic mystical quality that we put onto the things that we make, that it can only come from the artist, that we cannot separate the art from the artist. But I will argue that not only can you separate the art from the artist, the art is always separate from the artist. It isn't even an issue of needing to separate the good that we do from the bad that we are. You have some horrible people, or allegedly some horrible people, in the entertainment industry that have committed horrible things in their personal lives, and it becomes difficult for some people to look at what they've created that once brought joy and reconcile that with the demons and the skeletons in that person's closet. And the problem is that art is always an alibi. Art is always an alter ego. Almost never, and it may not even be possible, for the artist to truly be one with the art. They are separate entities. And we always attempt to apply the theory of author's intent and author's authority onto the work. We always project a part of the author onto the art. And there's a lot of, as we use in the modern day, the modern term that is used is the parasocial relationship. I believe that's the term that people use to describe the fascination, the infatuation with an artist, with someone that they've probably never met, never spoken to directly, but they perceive that they know that person just by seeing them on television, listening to their music, reading stories about them, watching interviews. You believe you know that person. You believe that person is your friend, your family, and you really connect with their work, or at least you believe that you do. You conceive that possibility. But oftentimes the issue is that there is no personality involved at all with the art. The person in real life is probably very boring. They eat, sleep, and shit just the way that you do. And there's nothing that they've actually transferred into their work. Yes, they may have had unique ideas. They may have woken up from a dream and conceived a possibility that no one else has conceived before. But there's nothing truly unique about what is actually being imprinted onto the work. So, anything that a human can do, a monkey can do, and anything that a monkey can do certainly can be done by artificial intelligence and robotics. These are tools that are used and implemented. These are tools that are implemented and created for the purpose of not only simulating what we can do, but surpassing what we can do. And not just passing the buck on to the robots, but we're really talking about, especially when we incorporate the synthesis of these tools with our minds, what we can achieve with them far surpasses anything that we should be able to achieve on our own. And we're not talking about aesthetics, like Studio Ghibli versus CGI. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the broad spectrum of human evolution. Must be, as Stanley Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke had explored in 2001: A Space Odyssey, and must be the next evolution of what we're capable of. We have made super intelligent, let's not say life forms, we have created a super intelligence. We have designed it, and it mimics us just like we mimic one another. So the thing about artificial intelligence, the big argument against it, is that it's guilty of plagiarism, that it doesn't have intuition, that it doesn't actually have a spirit or a soul, so the things that it creates are soulless. This assumes that the same cannot be applied to human beings, that human beings aren't the ones that are the original authors of the soulless. There's this incoherent idea that only humans are capable of art, that by definition, if it's not made by a person, that it cannot be considered artistic. But you see, the problem with that is that you're assuming that only human sentience is capable of creating art. But what about animals? What about ants? What about birds? What about beavers and so on? What about all of the architecture that you see in nature? What about the synthesis and the cohesion and the synergy that you see in everyday life? We're talking about life forms that have been much more evolved than us throughout much of human history. I'm not even sure that humans are the apex predators. We may not be the apex predators in our own homes, let alone in various parts of the world, let alone leaving outer space. All right, we're not even the apex predators on our own planet, let alone in the universe. So this idea that we are the peak form of sentience, you have to move the goalpost. You have to say, well, if animals can also create art, if we can revere the structures that we make, the architecture that we produce, why can't we also marvel at the ant colony or the bird's nest or the beehive, so on and so forth? So we see that art is intrinsic in nature. We see that all sentient life forms are capable of creating art. And now we can also see why, if you move it a little bit further, you just need to have some form of thinking going on. Now, perhaps the AI doesn't know what it knows. It can be said that it understands it enough to produce the desired results. It considers the parameters that you give it. By the very fact that you can ask AI what art is, it will produce a satisfactory response. And this shows that it is capable of art, because if you have given it a prompt, the same prompt that you would visualize in your head, of course they can make it possible, because they understand by synthesizing all of the data that it's compiled from human endeavor, we have an understanding about what humans at least have done, if not what they're always trying to do. And when you move the goalpost even further to consider really the worst possibility, what if aliens exist? This is the real roadblock to human specialty, to human supremacy. Is if you have artificial life forms, artificial intelligence, you may also have artificial life forms elsewhere. And if we assume that there's a super advanced alien civilization out there, all of the things that we think are unique inventions, they may not be unique whatsoever. And then we're moved even farther down the totem pole than we already are in the scope of the universe. So Art is not meant to be, I suppose in some sense maybe it is meant to be a very pretentious, sort of the peacock showing his feathers, that we've been putting ourselves on pedestals for the entire nature of our existence. We've always been looking at our species. We've been drawing on caves. We've been trying to show the exalted status of the human existence, and it just really isn't all that we think it is, what we all think it is. So we have to understand that, yes, there are human beings that have amazing technical skill, but this isn't really an argument about technical skill, because certainly you can give a prompt to AI and it can produce a better quality result than what a person would take them hours, days, maybe even weeks and months to produce. You can get almost in an instant. So this certainly cannot boil down to an argument about skill, because you lose that debate every time. What a robot will be able to do eventually will be so much more advanced than what a human can do physically. So then it comes down to, again, we cannot have this argument about some sort of magic that's been imbued in the art. It's just not really true, because what it boils down to is the influence. It's all about the influence. So there's this idea that plagiarism is totally wrong. You can't have plagiarism, but this is such an inconsistent viewpoint, because so many aspects of our lives are completely informed by plagiarism. Life itself is a form of plagiarism, because plagiarism at its core is nothing but replication. You don't ask to be born, so in that sense you haven't gotten anyone's permission to copy their DNA down the line. So plagiarism as replication, it exists all around us. Our world would not be what it is without replication. So there's this very pretentious argument that plagiarism is a no-no, and you cannot steal someone else's idea, when in copyright law it's not even possible to copyright an idea, because you can obviously get a patent for a blueprint, and then maybe you could do something if someone takes your blueprint. But if someone takes your idea or your blueprint and they succeed in creating your vision without you because you weren't ballsy enough to get it done, then that's your fault. But the reality is that we get everything that we understand through art. We get everything that we understand about art through plagiarism. Everything is about copying someone else's work, subconscious plagiarism, And then there's that great line in an Eminem song from years ago. Is that just copying or paying homage? The homage must be the most pretentious form of plagiarism, because if you want to plagiarize something, you need to do it discreetly. You don't need to put the reference points all over the work, like a watermark. Maybe you put it in the credits or something, but if you're going to plagiarize, it needs to be very subtle, because that's how you preserve the illusion of originality. But if you come out and just say that you're going to copy someone else's work, and you're going to give yourself a pat on the back for doing so, like when we remake video games or movies or music, that is the most pretentious and the truly sinful form of plagiarism, because you not only haven't changed anything and done anything original, you're slapping your name over the top of it. Instead, what you want to do is you want to take influence and inspiration from other people and other things, and a lot of it's subconscious, a lot of it you don't even realize that your idea was actually someone else's idea, but you forgot about the source point. In that way, we're able to continue the cycle of human influence on one another, and we pass it down just like we pass down memes. Nobody knows who the author of the anonymous author of the memes you see on a daily basis. Sometimes they're based on real people and real events, but you have memes that are created out of thin air. It's not important about giving the credit to who made it. It only matters that it's able to be passed down and digested through the culture very smoothly. So the thing about plagiarism is it's not only not a terrible thing, it's pretty fundamental. There may be some forms of plagiarism that we have to push back against, like the one I've mentioned. As Orson Welles said, there's nothing more contemptible in modern cinema than the homage.
The more virgin our eyes are, the more we have to say. The most detestable habit in all modern cinema is the homage. I don't want to see another goddamn homage in anybody's movie.
But paradoxically, you have to have as many influences as possible, the same way that AI has to have what we simplify down to as the database of everything that's been made and all of the information that's been synthesized and the models have been trained on. It's no different than the human creative process. What it comes down to, in essence, is you have the great philosophical argument made by Rene Descartes when he said that I think, therefore I am. And when he said that, it was one of the most brilliant things anyone had ever said at the time. And it seemed to be a foolproof explanation for why humans exist and why consciousness exists. Because if you have a thought that's been generated, then there must be someone doing the thinking. And that much is inarguable. If you've generated a thought, there must be some kind of entity that's doing the thinking. But the problem here with this, the one crack in the logic is that we don't know who is actually doing the thinking. That I have done this. I am the one that came up with this. No, you're not. The I is the subjective quality, right? The subject pronoun, the I. But we treat it as if it's objective, like I am the sole author, and it isn't. It really isn't that easy. Yes, you may have created something, but that doesn't mean that you are the true author's intent. That doesn't mean that you possess the true authorial intent. You may have been the object creating the art, but that does not mean that you are does not prove that you are the sole author and the sole authority of the work that you've created. There is something called false attribution, and because we have the subconscious influence from our surroundings, there's no way to know exactly how a song was written or inspired. And you have, of course, as I mentioned, examples of subconscious plagiarism, very famous examples in litigation about subconscious plagiarism. When you look at all of the ubiquitous technology that we're using, we're all copying each other. The United States will create something, and then China will get their hands on it, and they will make some shitty version of that product. And in some cases, they'll even make a better version of that product. So innovation is nothing more than copying what came before you and making slight improvements on it. Art is no different. Even the most abstract art, where does it come from? Well, if it's abstract, then you'll say it just came from someone's asshole. It might as well just have popped into their head, but where's the magic in that? Where is the lineage in that? How can we trace that kind of art and that kind of expression from one person to the next? Because if art is all about communication and art's all about sharing ideas and feelings, and when you have someone that's so abstract and so obtuse, how can you connect with it? When you look at what AI is producing, it isn't to say that AI isn't capable of that and originality just as well, but at least it's keeping the fabric together, because if AI is just plagiarizing what other people are creating, then you have that link, you have that causal link to humanity. The origin will always be humanity. Again, unless there's alien life forms and they have, something much more advanced than Grok or ChatGPT at their disposal, it's no different than what if another foreign government possesses highly advanced technology that we don't have. It's all about the framework. It's not about the artist's conception necessarily. Okay, you cannot separate the artist's conception from the art, but the artist as an individual is always separate from the artist's persona, because you don't even have to separate them. They are born separate from one another. When our memories are unreliable, you cannot answer what you even did on a given day. If I pick a random day without researching the archives, you won't even know what you did that day, let alone where you got the influence from something from, unless you're constantly journaling and writing it down. And even then, you may misremember and misquote the original source. So this idea that the artistic process is sacred, that you cannot plagiarize, that only humans can create something of value. Much of the junk that has been created now is always being made by people. There are a great deal of people that can easily be replaced by AI, and if you're easily replaced by AI, that is a symptom of a completely different problem, a completely larger problem, that you're just not as good as you think you are. Or you can always fall back on this argument that, if art is a labor of love, if art is truly a labor of love, then you shouldn't have lost nothing by letting AI create what they create. It's about as harmless as creating a greeting card if you view it as an impersonal thing because it was just mass produced. That's fine. But there's nothing different than what human beings do now. It's not about who prepares the meal for you. It's simply about the quality of the food that's been delivered to you. It's no different with art. Most people don't look at entertainment as much deeper. You have a vast majority of people with NPC thinking. They just watch what's in front of them. They see a poster for a movie. They see an ad for a TV show. They go watch it. And a lot of people are told what to think. And they're told how to feel already. This is human involvement. This isn't artificial intelligence trying to brainwash us. The propaganda and the messaging, this is all of human doing. And a lot of the perception around so much of what we consume is tailored by algorithms, and not even algorithms. It's tailored by manufactured marketing. So when it comes down to the sentimental value, of course, there's always sentimental value in art. There's more sentimental value in a child making a birthday card than when you go to Walmart or another store like Walgreens, whatever, and you get one of those pre-made birthday cards that's always annoying. Like, you really just want to see what's in the card. Is there money? Is there a check? Is there something else? It's the message. But the messenger is not the most important entity. It's the message. It's not the medium. The messenger may be important, but it's not the medium of how you get the message. It's just, have you received the message? Is it intact? Is it coherent? It's not about the technical skill. It's not about the person that made it. It's ultimately about the data, the ones and the zeros, and it's about the production values. The production values themselves are not important outside of how they relate to the intrinsic technical value. The cooking process is not very fun for most people. There will be some people that enjoy it, but the value is in the finished meal for consumption. The instruments and the music theory used to produce music, they're unimportant outside of how they create the way the music sounds. Again, Beethoven's music has survived for so many centuries, not because the man has been around, but because his blueprint has been around. And so For argument's sake, when it comes to music and falling in love with the artist, it doesn't really matter who created the art. It only matters that you like the music. If an AI were to produce, if we lived in a simulation right now, and if everything that had ever been created, it just so happens it was made by artificial intelligence. Or you have, if you want to be grounded in reality, you have the conspiracy theories about, Shakespeare was a ghostwriter. They say that Beethoven was black. They say all these ridiculous conspiracy theories. You already have, as I've said, subconscious plagiarism, ghostwriting. You have all these different forms. And you drive yourself crazy if you're stopping to think about, well, how original really is this? It's the parasocial relationship. It's a fallacy. You're trying to connect the dots where they cannot be connected. The person or the people that make something, who they are in their personal lives, who they are outside of work, who they are outside of their persona, because the art is almost never from the person, it's from the persona. It's a multi-layered process. And even then, the persona isn't even original. The persona is based off of other people's personas. We were all influencing each other en masse, and it's all just a web, just the way that artificial intelligence models are basically composed. That's an oversimplification, but it's really just an extension of what we've already been doing. It's basically just CGI, but without the extra steps. And people will say, well, but at least CGI still requires some technician, but you're missing the point. Because the argument is CGI is a tool to do things that aren't so easy to be done practically. So if you're worried about that person being replaced, and you're getting to the final form of artificial intelligence where it's almost completely automated outside of the prompt at this point, you're ignoring the fact that there's another person in the chain that has already been lost, because the decision to use CGI over practical stunt people and practical effects, this already cuts some people out of the picture. It's only when you synthesize all the different components that you get the desired effect, but it's also very possible to cut out the middleman, and that's what AI is doing. The ethical implications of this are entirely different from the actual logical, the philosophical viewpoint of this is that we're still going to get products, and we're still going to get the results, and we're still going to get the quality that we expect, and we're going to actually streamline that process. And as I've said, there's a lot of people that are so-called artists that really aren't that great, and they can get replaced and be forced to go and do something. We're all going to get replaced in some form or another, and it's not something I say with contempt or glee. Not even about the people that I think should not be working in the artistic industry to begin with. There's a lot of hacks out there. There's a lot of people already that have no soul in the way that they produce what they call art. They're just looking for the awards. They're not actually looking to tell a story. They're just looking for the validation. There's a lot of people like that in art. A lot of people are up their own ass in this industry, and that's why we have to remove the ego. We still have to have self-respect, but we need to remove the ego. We need to have some humility. If art is really about communication and humility, then we have to remove that. This idea that only people can do it, and that only certain people can do it best. Based on what? Based on results, yes, but there's nothing intrinsic that says only this person can produce that. The artist's integrity, the artist's conception, this is irrefutable. And this is why, author's intent is something I believe very strongly in, with maybe the minor possible exception that, again, there's this subconscious influence. Maybe the author doesn't know what they're saying. Maybe there's a logical flaw that they didn't realize that is injected into the work. But as far as the actual timeline of events is concerned, about the actual what is being shown to you on the camera lens is irrefutable. You cannot just pretend that you didn't see what you saw. And this may sound like a contradiction, but the greatest contradiction, it actually comes from the artist's subjective crowd. I want to finish the video with this. There's so much more that could be said. I want to finish the video with this. The greatest contradiction is the people that say that art is subjective, that all interpretations are true. If this is the case, then you cannot argue simultaneously against AI, because there's actually people like me that believe that art is objective for the most part, that believe in author's intent. There's actually people like me that support auteur theory, the theory that the director is the de facto representation. His vision is the de facto representation of the final product. That's a prevailing theory in cinema theory and film theory. And even that can be deconstructed by, all the other people that belong in the credits. You have people like Charlie Chaplin or Orson Welles that try to give themselves all of the credit, but it's never just one person, usually. But that doesn't mean that the finished product isn't what you see. You can't argue against what actually happens in the context of the story. The way it's presented, this is inarguable. There's very little room for subjective theory beyond that. There may be different reactions and different interpretations, but not all interpretations are true, and not all interpretations are likewise infallible. This is falsifiable. But the problem is you cannot support author's integrity and at the same time be the person that believes that all art is subjective, because you're in conflict with the artist's integrity at that point. So therefore, if you believe that AI is taken away from this role, really you should be on the same side as the AI, because if art is subjective, then what's to say that AI isn't also capable in a subjective way of producing something of value? Who are you to decry and bemoan this other entity from producing something that's very snobbish? So you cannot be at the same time the art snob and also support this idea that anyone can cook, that anyone can create art. You can't be both of those, because you're on two different spectrums of being pretentious. You can either say, I believe in author's intent, and I support the authors, I support the artists, and I want them to be respected, I want them to get the credit that they deserve. You should be on that side, and that side only, and then also be really calling out the bad forms of plagiarism, the lazy forms of plagiarism, where you go out of your way. It sounds like a paradox, sounds like a contradiction, but the lazy form of plagiarism is the one where you don't even try to hide that you've stolen something. You just come out and say, well, this is the remake of the game that was already award-winning 20 years ago, and we're going to repackage it to you and make it out as if we've done something that no one's ever thought of. Bullshit. You are the worst kind of charlatan. You are the immature poet. So you can't be on both sides of this. If you believe that art is subjective, you're actually on team artificial intelligence. You can't have it both ways. You can't be schizophrenic about you believe in author's integrity and you're drawing a line in the sand and you believe that art should be the way that original artist or that original team made it. Accepting that also the influences that came before them informed their work, that it's on the shoulders of giants kind of thing. You can be on that side, or you can be the all interpretations are untrue, and then you must then accept the interpretations of what the AI has created. So there's a lot of people that don't think very philosophically about this. There's a lot of very shallow thought about this. There's so much more that I could ramble on about. I could have done a more structured essay than this. I personally believe, as I've said, I believe in the magic and the sentimental value of art. I do believe it's a very human thing, but objectively speaking, it's capable. So many other entities are capable of producing it. It's not just something that we imbue into the world. We have the technical capabilities to produce art. We have the imagination, but it's not unthinkable that animals can't produce it, that artificial intelligence, even if artificial intelligence doesn't have quote-unquote intuition, well, it has the database. The oversimplification is it has the database, and you cannot count that out, because at the worst case scenario, it is still carrying forward the lineage of the things that we have made and it has synthesized. And I'm telling you, that's no different than the human creative process as it exists currently. So at some point, we're going to have to use artificial intelligence along with the things that we're already capable of to help truly form our visions the way we want from the original blueprint. And hopefully people don't get lost along the way, but I'm telling you, AI is a tool. I already get upset when people that don't even edit their own videos try to pass along that they've actually made the video themselves. When you do it all yourself, then you can say, only then can you say, this is mine and don't you dare try to take it from me. But that's a different pet peeve, because again, that comes back to, well, it's not the sole vision of that person, it's actually someone else's vision entirely. The editing of the video or the editing of the movie or the music, it's the sampling process, the mixing process. That really is the crux of it. So I can understand why people are against AI, but just from a philosophical standpoint, you can't argue with what AI is able to produce is not art. I mean, that's just plain semantics. It objectively exists, and we can do all kinds of experiments, thought experiments, where everything that you know could be completely the inverse of what you expect it to be. Does that fact change the fact that you enjoyed the music? Someone else made the food for you tonight. You like the food. Do you now hate the food because someone else made it? Do you hate it because if you were blind and you were taste testing it and you enjoyed it? It's just a bad faith argument. So yes, we do need to we need to find things for people to do always. But you can't be against artificial intelligence from some sort of from a purely the philosophy of art. You can't be against it just because of the math. The existential crisis is different, but the actual math that exists is inarguable. Art can be created by artificial intelligence. It can be just as valid as a form of human expression because it kind of is a form of human expression. So we have to stop making bad faith arguments. There's a lot of art bros that need to pull their heads out of their asses, and maybe you've got to start using it. If you're falling behind, then maybe you need to start implementing it and then become the superpower that we're meant to be, you know? Me personally, I don't use it. I still think it has a lot of room to grow. I think there's so much more that we can learn from each other, and AI can kind of be that conduit. The ethical implications they're heavy, but the actual artistic quality, the artistic quality is kind of inarguable.
Maybe a man's name doesn't matter all that much.